Hey everyone, Dave from Tombstone Tech. Welcome to my haunt for 2024. This comes courtesy of my niece Laura and her husband Travis in North Carolina. Came down here to do a haunt at their house, and let's take a little look around at it. So that was a quick look at my 2024 haunt, and I hope you enjoyed that. But what I'd like to do now is wind back to the beginning and go over some of the props and effects in detail, especially ones that I covered in earlier videos on this channel. So when I first visited my niece and her husband at their new house in North Carolina, they asked me, "Uncle Dave, what do you think we could do with this house for Halloween? What are the possibilities?" And the first thing I said was, well, your garage has got to be a mouth with eyes in the windows above the garage. I had no idea how I was going to do it at the time, but eventually what I figured out to do was I created a video file that was an animation of a single eyeball, not the two eyeballs, but the one. I put the eyeball animation video on an old laptop, and then I played the video on that laptop with the output going to an HDMI cable that was split, with one side going to a projector behind one window and the other side going to a projector behind the other window. And so the video of the eyeball in each window, it's actually the same video, just being projected by two projectors, and that's why the eyes stay in sync and everything. And I did a couple of goofy things, as you can see here. I have the eyes doing the swirly, I'm hypnotized effect, and they blink and look around, and overall I was very pleased with the effect. However, one thing that was interesting was if you look at this window on the right side of the screen, you'll notice that it looks different than the one on the left, in that it's kind of hazy and not quite as sharply focused. The reason for that is that I brought some rear projection material with me to put up in the eyes, or in the windows for the eyes, and I thought I had enough to do both windows, but I only had enough to do one window. So on the left, what I did was I took a tall kitchen garbage bag, a white plastic bag, slit it so that it would unfold into a shape that was about the size of the window, but not quite. As you look, it's a little smaller than that window on the left. However, I think the projection looks a lot better on that white plastic than on the rear projection material. So going forward, I'm just going to use a white garbage bag when I do something like this. Now, the other thing I want to point out is the teeth in the garage, and as you may have guessed, yeah, they're just cut from some 1-inch, I think it was 1-inch styrofoam. The only thing that I did to strengthen the styrofoam teeth is I put a coat of Mod Podge on them just to make them a little more resilient. The interesting thing is the way they are attached to the door frame of the garage. I didn't want to do anything to damage the paint or anything else because it was a brand new house. And what I did was I ran a strip of blue painter's tape across the top of that door frame, and then I used hot melt glue to glue the teeth to the tape that was on the door frame. This is something I actually learned from a woodworking channel that I like to watch. So the teeth are glued in place, and they were very sturdy. I bumped into them a few times working on the hunt, and I never broke the teeth or dislodged one from the door frame. And it was dead solid, worked really well. And then after the hunt was over, I just had to kind of wiggle and twist the teeth, and the hot melt glue popped off, and then I peeled off the painter's tape, and not a mark. And so that worked out really well. I was pleased with that. One other thing to point out while we're on this shot is the lights on the front of the house that have that fire effect. Those are cheap $3 or $4 light bulbs that I bought at a discount store, and they worked fantastic. I was very pleased with how those worked and the effect that they gave. So that kind of covers the front of the house, and we'll move on. Okay, gotta pause on this guy for just a second. I wanted to have a skeleton standing in the graveyard holding a lantern, and my niece had the brilliant idea of giving him a shovel to hold too, which I thought was very funny. So he's just held up with 10-pound fishing line, which is one of my favorite things to use in a hunt. Also, I'd like to mention that the lantern that he's holding, which is running on batteries, is the same one that I use to demonstrate how to eliminate the use of batteries in your props. So moving on now to the cemetery. I've had a cemetery in every hunt I've ever done. We're going to freeze frame this here during a lightning flash because it illuminates some things and it makes them easier to see. So the first thing is the gravestones. The gravestones are all styrofoam, and there's, unfortunately right now, I have a mix of very simple gravestones and several store-bought ones. There's nothing wrong with using store-bought ones, but I usually like to make my own. However, when I moved to the East Coast, a lot of the existing gravestones that I had didn't come with me. But I will be doing some new stuff on making styrofoam gravestones this year, so watch out for that. Now, the thunder and lightning is actually audio driven. I have a soundtrack of thunder that I play off of a cell phone, and the lightning is driven by a color organ. Now, a color organ, if you're old enough, you'll remember in the 70s they had these boxes that had a diffused lens on the front of them and a couple of Christmas light bulbs behind them, and there was a microphone in it, and when you played music, the different colored lights in it would flash to the sound of the music. They called it a color organ, but what I use it for is I'm driving lights. Now, the lights that are providing the lightning, you can kind of see a little bit of one right here in the front of the house, and there's a couple hidden behind the gravestones. These are the can lights that were in a recent video. They're just paint cans with a handle and a light socket in them, and this is the main thing that I use the can lights for. You'll also notice kind of back in this area, you'll see the ground fog amongst the tombstones, and that is the work of my simple and easy fog chiller, which was another video that I did, and well, here you can see that it works. Now, one other thing that's in the cemetery that is just an out-of-the-box store-bought thing is the singing pumpkins right down here, and you'll see a little bit of a close-up of them in a little bit. Generally, I like to do my own props. I like to scratch build them, but this one, the singing pumpkins, is just a video file, and you can see the projector hidden here behind the tombstone, and then I have some speakers behind the pumpkins so that they sound good and can be heard. I'm not a big fan of it. It's bordering on cute, but little kids seem to love it. However, soon I plan to do my own version of the singing pumpkins, because you see, I married a former Disney animator, so I have an animator at my disposal, and I'm going to do something where I combine the singing pumpkins with Walter, the banjo playing skeleton. So that'll be a major project that I want to do soon. Keep an eye out for that. So moving on to the porch of the house, you can see here there's a party of skeletons, and they are drinking and just out enjoying the thunderstorm and having a grand old time. I'm going to pause it here for a second so we can look at a few things. The one skeleton seems to have x-ray vision. He was one provided by my grandnephew. Yes, I have grandnephews. And he had LEDs in his eyes, and they're lighting up the fog in front of his face, which is sort of fun. But there's several props here that were featured in earlier videos. The most obvious one are the artificial candles. And these are made from polycarbonate tubes that are used to protect fluorescent light tubes. And there's just a battery-operated tea light candle in each one. You can't see it very well in this shot, but there's also hot melt glue that creates the wax strips down the sides of the candles. There is a link to the video that I made these candles in down in the description. In fact, there will be links to all the videos that I mention in this video down in the description. But anyhow, you can see the tea lights there. Also up here behind the skeleton with the x-ray eyes, you can see one of the flaming cauldrons. That was featured in its own video. And behind the table there, and there's a skull sitting on it for some reason, that is another fog chiller. I had one fog chiller out in the cemetery and one up here in the porch. And it was a little breezy that night, so some of the fog is getting blown around, but you could see from the previous freeze frame that the fog goes over the dry ice and sticks to the ground quite nicely. Back to the cemetery now, you can see the ground fog is working really nicely, and there again are the singing pumpkins, which little kids absolutely love that, and more than one or two adults were perplexed by that. They're like, how the hell is he doing that? And here, of course, is the star of the show, Walter. Now, Walter got his very own video where I had built Walter several years previously, and I did a video where I took the banjo playing mechanism and rebuilt it. So you can find a link to that video down in the description. Behind Walter is a Christmas light projector that projects little green dots, and with the addition of some fog, you get that nice vortex effect coming out from behind Walter. So that's about it for the 2024 hunt. I hope you enjoyed that, and we will see you on the next video.